This happened a few weeks ago. I'm 32 and work as a nursing assistant during night shifts at a city hospital. I've been there for about a year now, trying to support my family while I work on my nursing degree. I've gotten used to the sounds of machines and beeping monitors. It's a busy place. I figured it was just how hospitals were at night. Still, I've never stopped thinking about what happened. It was my third night on the shift. I was tired and almost too exhausted to notice anything. I remember walking down the long, sterile hallway. The lights flickered above me, and the white walls made everything feel empty. I heard soft, rhythmic tapping coming from the psychiatric ward. At first, I thought it was just the staff working late. I didn't think much of it then, but the tapping didn't stop. In fact, it got louder. I could hear it over the machines. I thought maybe it was someone needing help. Then came the voices, faint but clear enough that I swore they were calling my name. A chill ran down my spine. Maybe it was just my mind playing tricks on me. I was tired and hadn't slept much the past few nights. Each time I passed the ward, I felt something was off. Patients would stare at me with wide eyes, as if they understood something I didn't. The staff who used to joke around started avoiding the area. I overheard whispers about a recent incident. I didn't catch all the details, but I heard the words unreported and warning. I wanted to ask someone, but I didn't want to seem paranoid. Around midnight during my shift, I felt the air shift. I approached the ward again, hoping to find an answer, or at least someone who could explain what was happening. The tapping echoed again, more frantic this time, mixed with those mumbled voices. My heart raced. I stood outside the door and froze. I thought maybe I missed a meeting about some new protocol. Or perhaps it was the patients. I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be that restless. Then, I thought I saw a figure moving in the corner of my eye. I swung my head, but there was nothing there. My heart was pounding so hard, I felt like someone might hear it. I took a deep breath, pushed the door open slightly, and called out, "Hello?" I didn't even know who I was hoping would answer. That's when the tapping stopped. Everything went eerily silent. I leaned into the doorway, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. Then I heard someone whispering again. This time, it was clearer. They said my name. I stumbled back and bumped into the wall. I was standing there, scared, when I heard a voice behind me say, "Why are you here, Avery?" I turned around quickly, and there was nobody there. I felt like I was going to faint. I stepped back, shaking. I wanted to run, but my feet wouldn't move. The voice echoed in my head over and over. Then I heard the tapping again, soft at first, like it was waiting for me to react. I took a breath, trying to gather my courage again. I stood there, hoping someone would come and explain all this. The night wore on, but I didn't leave that spot. The tapping went on. It felt like it would never end. I never went near the psychiatric ward again. I still hear the whispers sometimes, and I still wonder what they wanted from me. The following night felt heavier than usual. I arrived at the hospital, anxiety clinging to me like a second skin. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching. I took a deep breath as I clocked in, attempting to focus on my duties. My coworkers talked amongst themselves, but their laughter felt distant. During my shift, I stuck to the areas I knew well, the patient floors and the break room. I tried to forget about the psychiatric ward, but it loomed in my mind. Each time I passed the hall, I could hear the tapping. It was like a metronome, measuring out my anxiety. As midnight approached, I gathered the courage to check on my patients. I pushed past the glass doors, ensuring the ward was still filled with occupied rooms. Nothing had changed. My heart sank. I returned to my duties. Hours later, after ensuring everyone was doing okay, I heard the tapping again. I froze. It was rhythmic, like it was trying to communicate something. I felt a pull towards it. Curiosity battled with the dread in my mind. I stood outside the ward once more, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I thought about the words I had overheard. Unreported. Warning. What was I doing? Suddenly the lights flickered, casting shadows that danced along the walls. I flinched. The hallway grew faint, the noise of machines dulled. I peered inside, and for a moment, everything felt very still. Then, from somewhere deep in the ward, I heard it again. Avery. Panic rose within me. I turned to run, but a voice called out again, this time from right beside me. You need to listen. I gasped and whipped around, but no one was there. My legs moved before I could think, and I dashed to the nurse's station, my heart hammering in my chest. "Are you okay?" one of the other nurses asked, concern etched on her face. I nodded, though I felt anything but. I noticed the way she glanced towards the psychiatric ward. "You hear it too, don't you?" I whispered. She looked at me, her eyes wide. I avoid that area," she stammered. "No one goes in there. You shouldn't either." "What happened?" I pressed, desperate for answers. She hesitated, glancing around as if worried someone might overhear. "There was an incident a few nights ago. One of the patients escaped his room and—" Her voice trailed off. "What did he do?" I asked. "He got hurt. Badly. Some say he was trying to get to someone." A chill swept through me. The tapping wasn't just random. It was intentional. A message from a place filled with despair. I felt sick in my stomach. I looked down the hallway toward the ward again, knowing I couldn't run from this forever. I needed answers. But before I could decide, the lights flickered yet again. And this time, it went dark. I could barely see anything in front of me. Fear surged as footsteps echoed from behind, growing closer with each heartbeat. I turned to run, but just then, everything went silent. I stood in the dark, my breath caught in my throat. The silence was thick, almost suffocating. I couldn't tell where the footsteps had gone, and a sense of dread pulled at my gut. I took a hesitant step back toward the nurse's station, trying to remember how to breathe. Then, a low voice broke the stillness. "Help me." It was faint, but there was no mistaking the urgency. My heart dropped. "Help me," it repeated, echoing in the darkness around me. I froze. Where was it coming from? My mind raced back to the tapping and the name I had heard. Avery. Who was Avery? I knew I had to find out, even if every instinct screamed at me to run. I took a step towards the psychiatric ward, my feet moving almost of their own accord. The door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open, the old hinges creaking eerily. The air inside was humid and stale, heavy with an unsettling sense of abandonment. I felt the reassuring buzz of fluorescent lights flicker back on, only for a second, then die once again, plunging me back into darkness. "Who's there?" I whispered, hoping for an answer, though the empty silence mocked my desperation. That voice had come from inside. It couldn't have been a trick of my imagination. "Help me," came the voice again, a bit louder now, a tone pregnant with fear. Swallowing hard, I stepped deeper into the ward. The tapping resumed, louder and faster this time, like frantic fingers drumming against a surface. "Avery," I said aloud, testing the name on my lips. A flicker of light caught my eye, and I turned toward it. I spotted a dim glow at the end of the corridor, coming from one of the patient rooms. My legs moved without permission, carrying me closer. There was something in me that wanted to stay away, but curiosity dragged me forward. As I reached the door, I hesitated. Images flashed in my mind of the other nurse's words. "No one goes in there." With a trembling hand, I pushed the door open. The room was empty, but the cold air wrapped around me, sending shivers up my spine. "Avery?" I called out softly, feeling foolish. No answer came, just the relentless tapping that now seemed to emanate from inside my head. I turned to leave, but before I could make it, a figure appeared at the end of the hallway. A shadowy figure with dark hair hanging in front of its eyes. My heart raced, and I felt my pulse in my ears. "Help me," it whispered again. The lights flickered weakly one last time, illuminating the gaunt face of the figure, its expression pleading. The moment froze, and I couldn't move, caught in the grip of fear. But as the light went out again, I thought I heard a different sound. A soft sob, mixed in with the tapping. Then everything went black. My eyes shot open in the dark. For a moment, panic washed over me as I struggled to remember where I was. The eerie silence wrapped around me again. But there was no tapping, no voice, just an empty stillness. My heart raced. I was still in the psychiatric ward. I pushed myself off the floor, feeling my surroundings for some semblance of reality. Everything felt wrong. The air was thick, and the shadows seemed to pulse with unseen energy. The door I had entered through was still ajar, a faint sliver of light grabbing my attention. It wasn't just a flicker. The glow was steady, like a beacon calling me back towards the nurse's station. Swallowing my fear, I inched my way towards the light. Each step felt like a gamble, as if I were walking on a tightrope over a chasm of dread. Just as I reached the door, a loud slam echoed behind me, followed by what felt like a whisper against my ear. "Help me." My skin crawled. I turned quickly, searching for the source, but all I found was darkness wrapping around each corner of the ward. It seemed to taunt me, begging me to leave, but I couldn't. Something kept me rooted in place. "Avery?" I called out. No response. I cursed myself for uttering that name, as if it turned the air toxic. The silence felt mocking, but the longer I stood still, the harder it was to resist intrepid curiosity. Then I recalled the light down the hall, the one that had drawn me in the first place. My determination surged, and I ventured deeper into the ward, the soles of my shoes squeaking against the linoleum floor. I reached the doorway again and peered inside. The room was still empty, but with the light shining through it felt different now, as if the shadows were alive, lurking just beyond reach. As I stepped into the room, my eyes fell upon something on the floor. It was a small, tattered notebook. I picked it up and wiped the dust away, feeling the weight of anticipation settle over me. Flipping it open, the pages were worn and crinkled, filled with messy handwriting. I scanned the words quickly. "They tap at night. I can hear them. I can see her." My heart pounded. It was a collection of entries, detailing Avery's experience in the ward. The last few pages were hastily written, full of alarmed scrawlings. "I can't sleep. They're coming for me," the ink read, jagged and frantic. Gripped by a sudden chill, I glanced at the walls as if they could answer my questions. The tapping returned, but louder this time, a rhythm that was more urgent. It was as if something was desperately trying to get my attention. Before I could think about running, I spotted blood on the next page, smearing across the words. "Help me," wailed inside my head, and suddenly I was overwhelmed by the feeling that I wasn't alone. That was when I heard it, a deep, guttural growl resonating from the corner of the room. My breath quickened as I realized I had to get out. I turned to sprint back toward the door, my heart racing like it might burst. But then I heard it again, louder this time, echoing through the corridor. "Help me." Someone, or something, was still here. My feet moved on instinct. I sprinted toward the door, hands trembling as I tried to push it open. The growl intensified, vibrating through the floor and echoing against my bones. I didn't want to look back. I could feel the shadows closing in, whispering secrets I wasn't ready to hear. I burst into the hallway, letting the door slam behind me, rattling on its hinges. The sudden contrast of light nearly blinded me. I squinted, trying to adjust, and there it was again. The tapping, louder and more insistent now. It seemed to bounce off the walls, as if calling out, waiting for me to respond. I moved down the corridor, trying to track the sound. Each tap felt like a drumbeat in my chest, matching my frantic heart rate. I passed empty rooms, glancing inside as I went. They were all the same, bare and cold, with nothing but shadows lurking in the corners. A frigid gust of air whipped through the corridor, making the hair on my arms stand on end. The tapping shifted to my left, pulling me toward another door marked Isolation. "Help me," the voice repeated, clearer now and unmistakably feminine. Panic surged again, but I had to know who it was. As I reached for the door handle, the tap grew desperate, like nails on a chalkboard. I hesitated, a chill running down my spine. I thought of the notebook, of Avery's pleas. They had only worsened when her danger was near. "Avery!" I shouted, half expecting her to respond, yet half dreading the answer. The door felt cold under my palm as I twisted the handle. It creaked open, revealing a stark room illuminated by a single flickering bulb. The flickering cast bizarre shapes across the walls, a dance of shadows that swirled with a life of its own. My breath hitched when I noticed a figure huddled in the far corner, back turned to me. "Avery?" I whispered, stepping inside. The figure didn't move. My stomach sank as the growling returned, low and threatening. I took a cautious step closer. "Avery, is that you? Are you okay?" No response came. The air felt heavy, as though it held its breath, waiting. I reached out to touch her shoulder, instinctively needing to break the silence. My fingers brushed against fabric, and just as I was about to shake her gently, she spun around. It was not Avery. The woman before me was not real. Pale, her eyes shadowy hollows, mouth slack, and a grin that stretched unnaturally wide across her face. I stumbled back, terror paralyzing me as the growling erupted into deafening laughter. Then everything went dark. A silence enveloped me, pressing in like the walls themselves were closing, and I felt dread coil in my stomach. My mind raced as I scrambled to remember where I was. In the gloom, I heard a soft whisper rising from the darkness. "Help me." But this time, it didn't sound like Avery. It sounded like my name. I opened my eyes, but the darkness didn't fade. I felt disoriented, as if I'd been caught in a dream that had twisted at the seams. Panic clawed at my throat. I blinked, fought against the murkiness, and finally, a dim light flickered back into sight. I sat up, my heart pounding. I was no longer in the isolation room. Instead, I found myself in another small empty space, lined with lockers and medical supplies. A hospital? I recognized it from my late-night shifts. The air was sterile but infused with a creeping chill. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling, swallowed by the heavy silence. I pushed myself to my feet, checking the door at the end of the room. It was stuck, rattling as I pushed against it. The whisper came again. "Help me." This time, it felt closer, more urgent. I turned around, looking for the source of the sound. A hallway stretched before me, dull and gray, with flickering lights that barely illuminated the way. I felt a cold draft brushing past me. The growling echoed softly in the distance, reminding me I wasn't alone. Keeping my voice steady, I shouted again, "Avery, are you here?" In the far distance, I thought I heard something. A giggle, nasally and eerie. My throat tightened, a mix of dread and curiosity clashing within me. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The shadows seemed to twist and flare, almost alive, as I took my first step into the hallway. With each passing moment, the laughter grew louder. It wasn't just any laughter. It was sinister, dripping with malice. "Help me," it mocked. "Help!" I felt like a fool for calling out. I turned back toward the door, but the handle was now cool and unyielding. The sound of my heartbeat drowned out everything else as I clutched it tightly and pushed. No luck. "Just breathe," I whispered to myself, even though my breaths came quick and shallow. I took a step into the hallway, toward the laughter, drawn by the unsettling pull of curiosity. Shadows clung to the corners, shifting almost knowingly in response. The walls were painted with memories I didn't want to uncover. My foot stumbled over something, a crumpled paper, discarded. I picked it up. It was a page torn from a notebook, shaky handwriting spelling out, "They won't let me go. It's not safe here." My heart raced. These were Avery's words. That's when I saw it. At the end of the hallway, an open door beckoned with a strange, unnatural light spilling through. I felt it call my name in a way that chilled me. Then the laughter transformed into a cacophony of screams, intermingling with the growling that surrounded me. My legs stiffened, roots of fear anchoring me in place. Whatever was behind that door was worse than what I'd already encountered. But if Avery was in there... With a surge of determination, I lunged forward, stepping into the light. The moment I crossed the threshold, the door slammed shut behind me. I stood in the sudden brightness, my eyes struggling to adjust. The room was vast, unlike the narrow hallway I had fled. Walls were lined with jagged mirrors reflecting distorted images of myself, warping my fear into something unrecognizable. I took a hesitant step forward, scanning for any sign of Avery. "Where are you?" I whispered, anxiety creeping back. Faint echoes of the laughter and screams lingered in the air, mixing with a low hum that thrummed in my bones. I stepped further inside, my shoes clicking on the cold, tiled floor. The hum intensified, resonating with an unsettling urgency. That's when I noticed the figures in the mirrors. They were just shadows, swirling and shifting as if trapped beneath the glass. A hand rose from the darkness, then vanished as quickly as it appeared. I shivered. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I felt their lost souls urging me to see. Suddenly, a loud clatter came from across the room, snapping me out of my daze. I turned sharply, trying to locate the source. A metal cart, once stationary, had toppled over, its contents spilling across the floor. Vials, syringes, and grotesque instruments gleamed in the harsh light. My stomach twisted at the sight. "What is this place?" I muttered. I needed to find Avery. I couldn't let fear paralyze me. I hesitated only a moment before approaching the mess. As I picked up a syringe, a flicker of movement caught my eye from the corner. A figure darted past the mirrors. Was it Avery? Panic surged as I dropped the syringe and sprinted after the fleeting shadow. "Avery!" I called, desperation fueling my voice. I rounded the corner, heart racing. But the shadow had disappeared. I pressed against the wall, catching my breath. The coldness of the tiles seeped into my skin, a reminder of how vulnerable I felt in this place. What were these dark corners hiding? The hum transformed again, now accompanied by soft, almost melodic whispers that filled the air. "Help us. Stay." It sent chills down my spine. I didn't want to stay. I just wanted to find Avery and leave. Moving cautiously, I approached another door, rusted and uninviting. It creaked as I pushed it open, and inside, I found a room draped in an unnatural gloom. A single flickering bulb dangled from the ceiling. In the center lay an operating table, stained and grotesque. Scattered papers littered the floor, some covered with frantic scribbles, others depicting sketches of horrifying procedures. That's when I spotted it, a photograph pinned to the wall. My breath caught as I recognized the faces. It was Avery, but beside her stood a figure cloaked in dark. They wore a mask, and the empty eye holes seemed to watch me. "This can't be happening," I whispered, feeling the room close in around me. Who was that figure? What had they done to Avery? Before I could explore further, a loud bang jolted me. I spun around, the door had swung shut with a crash behind me. The sound echoed ominously as I heard a faint, distorted laugh behind the wall. A sound I was becoming too familiar with. I backed up against the table, my heart racing as the whisper grew again. "Help us." But in that moment, I realized I wasn't just seeking Avery. I was being hunted as well. I pressed my back against the cold metal of the operating table, breath shallow. The whispers swirled around me, pulling me deeper into the web of fear. I could feel something watching. The laugh, taunting and twisted, echoed through my mind, drowning out the panic that began rising in my chest. Gathering every ounce of courage, I glanced toward the door. Locked. I could feel its weight pressing down on me, each creak of the wood reminding me of my entrapment. Then I heard it again, the footsteps. Light at first, then stronger, moving in syncopated rhythm against the tiled floor. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to center myself. "Avery," I whispered, the taste of her name bitter on my tongue. Lifting my head, I scanned the room for any potential weapon. The vials from the cart lay scattered, taunting me with their potential use. Desperate, I grabbed a jagged shard of glass from the floor, the sharp edge glinting menacingly under the flickering bulb. I felt a strange rush of power coursing through me. If something was coming for me, I would be ready. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, as if someone or something was trying to break in. I stifled a gasp and pressed myself flat against the table, heart pounding in my ears. The laughter returned, louder this time, mixed with an urgent chant that echoed off the walls. "Join us! Join us!" Fear gripped me like a vice. I didn't want to join anything. I wanted to leave this nightmare behind. A loud bang followed the rattle, and a shadow flickered at the edge of the door. My blood ran cold. It was coming in, and I had nowhere to run. That's when I saw it. A glimmer of light flashing through the crack beneath the door. My heart leaped with hope. Someone was out there. I stepped forward, carefully avoiding the broken glass. "Help!" I shouted, flinging myself against the door. "Please, help me!" Silence fell, heavy and unbearable. I could almost hear my own heartbeat, drumming against my ribcage. The laughter stopped, replaced with a soft thudding noise, like something, or someone, moving away. In that stillness, the whispers returned, softer now. A seductive lullaby promising safety if I only dared to stay. Stay. With us. We can help. No! I yelled, stepping back. The last thing I needed was to fall into their trap, to become one with whatever cursed souls haunted this place. I had to find Avery, and I had to get out. I turned and slammed my shoulder against the door. It shook but held firm. The humming sound intensified, vibrating against my skin, urging me to give in. Just as I prepared for another attempt, a different noise reached my ears. A voice. "Avery?" I called, straining to hear. "Is that you?" I swiveled back to the sound, desperate for a response. My heart soared in hope when I saw the shadow again, darting just beyond the flickering light. I had to act now. I couldn't lose her again. Without thinking, I lunged at the door, pushing against it as hard as I could. Suddenly it gave way with a loud crash, and I stumbled out, eyes wide and scanning. The hallway loomed in darkness before me, but the figure had vanished. Then, from deep within the shadows, I heard a voice, faint but unmistakable. "Help me." In that moment, I knew we were still in this together. But I also knew something was watching, and whatever it was wasn't done with me yet. As I stepped into the hallway, a chill raced down my spine. The laughter and whispers were muffled now but still hung in the air, clinging to the walls like smoke. I had to find Avery. The dim lighting cast long shadows, and each flicker seemed to taunt me, pulling me deeper into the uncertainty of this place. "Where are you?" I called, my voice trembling. The corridor stretched out endlessly, lined with closed doors. I peered into the first one, heart racing, but it was empty except for overturned chairs and scattered papers. Instinctively, I pressed forward, desperation driving my every move. The voice echoed again, distant yet clear. "Help me!" It sent a thrill of panic through me. I couldn't lose her. I sprinted down the hallway, tracing the sound like a lifeline. Each step felt heavier than the last, the dread creeping back in. I reached a T-junction and paused, my decision hanging in the air. Left or right? The voice seemed to call from the right, but something tickled the back of my mind, like a whisper warning me. I shook my head and turned right, pushing onward. Avery needed me. The thudding noise returned, louder now, and I felt it resonate through the walls. I pressed my palm against the cold surface, trying to draw strength from it. "Avery! Help me!" I followed the voice until I reached another door, this one slightly ajar. I hesitated, breathing raggedly. The last thing I wanted was to walk into another trap, but I couldn't stop. I flung the door open, ready to confront whatever lay beyond. The room was dark and chaotic, a stark contrast to the sterile operating room I had fled. Papers were strewn everywhere, and the air was stifling. Then I saw her. Avery, lying on a cot, pale and motionless. "Avery!" I rushed to her side, dropping to my knees. I shook her gently, panic bubbling in my chest as I checked for signs of life. Her breath was shallow, but she was alive. Relief hit like a wave, but it was quickly overshadowed by the creeping dread that shrouded us. Suddenly the lights flickered and went out completely. Blackness enveloped us. My heart dropped, and I fumbled for my phone, fingers shaking as I switched on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing shadowy figures looming just beyond the walls. "Get up," I cried, knowing we had to leave. But as I tried to lift her, a heavy weight pressed against my chest, the whispers growing louder, drowning my thoughts. "Stay with us. Join us." "No!" I shouted, my voice breaking. I felt the icy grip of fear clawing at my insides. I couldn't succumb. "Avery, we have to go!" I pulled her up with all my strength, but a cold wind rushed through the room, slamming the door closed behind us. Panic surged through me as I shoved against it, but it wouldn't budge. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and the laughter returned, echoing around us like a haunting choir. Avery stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open. "What? Where are we?" "Not now," I urged, trying to focus on getting us out. But then I felt it, the oppressive presence closing in, like a chokehold around my throat. A figure stood at the door, tall and indistinct, an overwhelming reality settling into the pit of my stomach. That's when I realized we weren't alone. The shadows had come to claim us. I pushed forward, my back colliding with the door as I pressed against it, blocking whatever malevolence lurked on the other side. It felt like a living entity, and I knew it wouldn't rest until we were trapped within this nightmare. "Avery!" I shouted, aiming to pull her closer, my urgency dwindling under the weight of dread. She looked at me, dazed but focused, the fear in her eyes matching my own. "How did we get here?" she asked, her voice shaky. "Just hold on." I tried to sound reassuring, even though I could feel the shadows creeping along the floor, whispering our names in a tone that wrapped around my heart like a vice. As I pressed my defense against the door, the hum grew louder. It throbbed in the dark like a heartbeat, insistent and hungry. I could feel the energy pulsate, as if it knew fear could be tasted, manipulated. I turned to Avery, shaking her slightly. "We can't stay here. We have to find a way out." Her eyes widened. "But what about them?" she whispered, pointing weakly at the floor. Shadows flickered like candlelight, a swirl of faces and figures contorted in silent screams. I felt my breath hitch. "Stay back," I warned, trying to rise above the haunting sounds that surrounded us. We wouldn't fall victim to whatever machinations this place had in mind. "We have to move. Come on!" I grabbed Avery's hand, forcing her to her feet. Together, we pushed against the door, and with an impossible effort, it finally swung open, bathing us in the flickering lights from the hallway beyond. I could barely breathe as we stumbled out, my heart racing wildly. Ahead of us stretched a dim corridor into the unknown, the laughter receding but leaving a palpable chill. We ran, fear propelling us as we darted down the hallway, the darkness seeming to twist and contort behind us. "Avery! Where do we go?" I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. "I don't know," she cried back, the panic rising in her voice. "We need to find the exit." The echoes of our footsteps rang against the walls, and I fought against the fear gnawing at my insides, trying to recall the layout of the hospital, the emergency exit signs I had ignored in my shift-induced haze. Suddenly, the ground shook beneath our feet, sending us both crashing against the wall. A deafening roar cut through the air, as if the very building itself was protesting our presence. "Keep moving," I shouted, pulling Avery onward. We reached a set of double doors marked with bold white letters, "Exit," but they refused to budge, sealed tight as if fortified by an unseen force. The growling returned, low and menacing, echoing down the hallway like a hunt closing in. "Avery, help me!" I pounded against the door, adrenaline surging through my veins. I threw my shoulder against it again and again. "Help me, please!" Then a shadow darted from the corner of my eye, a flicker, and suddenly the door gave way, swinging open into a blinding light. I yanked Avery through the threshold, and for a split second, it felt like the weight of the world lifted as we tumbled out into the cool night air. Breathless, I looked back into the doorway, half expecting something to lunge forward, but all was still. "I can't believe we're out," Avery gasped, her voice a mix of disbelief and terror. I glanced back, but the door shimmered like a mirage behind us. It looked just like any other door in the hospital now, devoid of the horrors we had faced. For a moment, part of me wanted to believe it was all behind us, but even as I turned to look at Avery, the questions swirled in my mind, like the lingering whispers of the shadows we had left. What had chased us? What were those things we encountered? Avery's face was drawn, pale as the moonlight washed over us. Had we truly escaped, or were we just outside the reach of something more profound, lurking just beyond perception? "I don't think it's over," I said quietly. She looked at me, the fear returning to her eyes. "What do you mean?" The hospital loomed behind us, a structure that felt no longer known. It was now a mystery, a puzzle unsolved. They were calling my name, and it felt so real. Avery shuddered, and I felt the echo of despair clinging to us, even in freedom. As we walked away, the shadows flickered along the walls of the hospital, swirling more than dancing. I moved a few steps ahead, but every glance back anchored my heart, knowing some mysteries are never fully unraveled. Sometimes, I really wonder if we left it all behind or simply moved into a different chapter. But I do know one thing. We'll have to avoid that hospital in the many nights to come. We cast a long shadow of our own that may never fully let go.